Hello guys and welcome for another New World video. You might be wondering, didn't he upload the Rapier bleed build few months ago? I think in that video he already explained the basics for the Rapier bleed build for PvE. What the hell is the new video about and what is this min-maxing stuff? If that's the first question that comes through your mind, you are completely right to think so. I made a video about the Rapier bleed build in PvE exactly 4 months ago, and to this day it's my go-to build when I want to play mutations and to have some PvE adventures and fun. However, in those months I also gained quite a lot of experience with the build and I learned a lot of new things which can improve even further the output of the build and overall performance. This doesn't mean that what I was doing before is completely useless or it doesn't have high value. No, not at all. But with these few updates, which I will mention in few minutes, you will be able to push the limits even further and maximize the potential of the build. It is important to mention that this mostly concerns people who are aiming to achieve high score runs or at the same time they are pushing the boundaries for the top 5 weekly speed running. So without further ado, let's take a look on the changes of the build after those 4 months of active testing and gaining experience. To start it all off, I think it's best to see the most important part of this build, and this of course is the Rapier. Without a doubt, the best Rapier for this is the finisher, as it provides a huge amount of damage on bleeding targets. For last perk on it, I still believe that Keenly Empowered is the best choice, simply because it increases the bleed damage with a lot and cannot be compared with any other perk. The skill tree of the Rapier should look like this, and of course the main abilities are still the same. We are looking at Tondo with the necessary passives to it, Flourish and Finish with all the extension, and of course Flurry with all the passives as well. The remaining points are spread across the board in order to provide us with even more damage and cooldowns. For secondary weapon, this time we have a bit of a mix, and this is the first thing that I improved in those few months. Previously I was playing with Ice Gauntlet, which can provide a lot of passive damage with the pylon while you are DPSing with the Rapier. The skill tree can differ in 2 different builds, and of course I will go over both of them. The first one is mainly focused on the pylon combined with the Ice Storm and of course the Ice Shower. The Ice Storm will provide even more AoE damage to all the clumps of mobs, and of course the Shower will provide you with Rend, crowd control and of course the bonus movement speed. The second one is prioritizing the full damage potential of the Gauntlet, and it's mostly used in dungeon where the mob count is quite high. For this one you need to take the Ice Spike, Ice Storm and of course the Pylon. But this time the ultimate passive will be placed on the left side of the skill tree. For perks on the Ice Gauntlet using the first mentioned skill tree, I like to go with Pylon Burst, Vicious, and for third one I choose between Keenly Jacked or Keenly Empowered. Take a note that all Keenly perks can be transferred to your other weapon upon weapon swap as long as you have the same perk on both weapons. This means that if you opt for Keenly Empowered, you will be able to proc it on both weapons without losing the effect after the swap. For the second type of build of the Ice Gauntlet, which is mainly prioritizing the damage with the Ice Spike, I believe that the best one would be Vicious, Ice Spike and Keenly Empowered. There is a small but extremely important note here that you should always try to use the spike right after root ability from one of your teammates or yourself. The spike perk will net you a lot of bonus damage, but only if the target that you are hitting is rooted. That's why min-maxing build is focused towards groups which are aiming for the high results. If you are wondering who will provide you with the root, well of course the easiest answer is that Scream can come from the Void Gauntlet user, which mainly is the healer. Then of course the Spear or Great Axe users that are running Vines can do that for you. And of course, last but not least, one of the hardest one to pull off, because you need a lot of synchronization, is whenever you see a Gravity Well, you can instantly cast the Spike, as the Gravity Well applies a root for 1 second. The other weapon which I also found quite useful in numerous occasions for different dungeons was the Musket. With it you can pull enemies from a big distance, but also we have to take note that the scaling for it is mirrored with the one of the Rapier. This means that the damage will scale both of your intelligence and dexterity, and since we are heavily invested into those two, we will have a lot of damage on our musket as well. For a skill tree of the musket, you can simply check the one that is currently on your screen, and of course the rotation for high damage with it is to start with a sticky bomb into a powder burn shot, followed up by a dodge so we can reload instantly with the passive from the skill tree, and then of course to follow up with another shot which is using the power shot. You can do that combo as much as you want, but I would suggest you to wait at least 6 seconds, as this is the cooldown time for your passives, which will give you a free reload after dodge. Of course, the musket can be also used as a main damage weapon in different cases, as it will give you survivability and of course more safety. To give you some examples, we can mention the last boss of depths, the Ineat last bosses, or maybe even Dynasty. For perks on the musket, I believe that Vicious, Attunement and again either Keenly Empowered or Keenly Jacked would be the best ones to deal the maximum damage. Take a note that Enchanted is also extremely nice perk, but with it you will not increase the damage of your sticky bomb since this is an ability. That's why I always like to go with the Vicious. Now, since we took a fast look over the weapons, let's go over the armor perks and check what is necessary to get the best gear possible. Same as before, the Nimble Coat is our best pick from the armor artifacts. Due to the extra cooldown, there is currently no better option for the Rapier Bleed build. For last perk on it, I always go with Flurry, as it will give me the necessary lifesteal and invulnerability in tough situations. The other perks which we want to have are of course the 4 refreshings, so we can guarantee the maximum cooldown reduction. We also want to have as many as possible enchanted ward and health perks, and of course everything else can be just considered as a bonus. In ideal world, the best combination of armor pieces could be looking like this, but of course this is not always possible and not everyone has that much of resources to invest into a PvE build. For jewelries, I also made a small adjustment from the previous video because now I know something new. Previously, I was aiming to get bloodletting on the ring since I wanted to hit the maximum duration of bleeds of 20 seconds. However, after extended testing, I found out that Flurry increases the duration of all previous bleeds and not only on itself, and therefore you can actually hit the maximum of 20 seconds just by finishing your 3 combo bleed with a Flurry. With that in mind, we can already look to replace the bloodletting from the ring with something more useful. The best ring in my opinion would be Hearty for the extra stamina, thrust damage so we can gain that extra 7% of empower, and of course leeching so we can make sure that we maintain the full HP at all time so our diamond on the weapon will be at use. For amulet, I still consider health and elemental protection depending on the type of the mutation to be the most important 2 perks. For the third one, you can choose from Refreshing, Empower or even Divine, but I personally like to go with Refreshing as it will give me another open slot for defensive perk on the armor. For earring, you can easily go with Endless Thirst and choose for last perk either Refreshing Toast or Refreshing. However, if you are missing this artifact, you can just aim for a normal earring that contains Refreshing Toast, Refreshing and Empowering Toast. Going forward into the build, we cannot pass another damage source, and of course this is our Hearthrune. Even after many nerfs, I still believe that Detonate is one of the best choices for Blood Rapier players due to the fact that while charging and using the Hearthrune, you are still able to do damage with your rapier. This is not the case with some other runes such as Vines, Firestorm, Cannon and others, and therefore I always go with the brutal Hearthrune of Detonate. Keep in mind that with this variation of the rune, you will deal extra percentages of damage, but during the time of charging, you will have your armor values reduced by 50% due to the rend. Before going into the tips and tricks section, I want to share with you as well another important part of the build, and this of course are the attributes that we're gonna use for it. Again, this has a small change from the previous guide, and of course it is with the idea to min-max our output. With the current build, I always opt to go with 25 focus for the extra cooldown reduction, 350 intelligence for all the different passives from the intelligence tree, and the rest is slotted into the dexterity. With this split, your secondary weapon will deal as well the maximum amounts of damage, and you will be able to get even better results. Keep in mind that going with 5 constitution is extremely risky, and of course if you are new to the build or the game, I suggest you to start with a higher value. You can always start with 50 or 100, and of course with the time and the experience that you're gonna gain with it, you can drop the constitution level to lower amounts. And last but not least, I want to share a few tricks and tips with you for all of the weapons used in this build, so you can gain that extra mile. When you are playing with your Pylon Ice Gauntlet build, make sure to always cancel your animations with dodge. This way you will not only cast your abilities faster, but also you will proc the Pylon Burst passive, which will add even more damage. When you are using the Ice Storm, never use Ice Shower without dodging. There is a small animation delay which will slow you down if you use those two abilities consecutively. If you use the Storm, make sure to dodge and then apply the shower. This way you will always be faster, and also with the passive you will be able to reduce your cooldowns. When you are playing with the Spike Ice Gauntlet build and you have already Keenly Empowered in your weapon, make sure to always basic attack before using the Ice Spike. The reason for that is to aim and proc the Empower before the Ice Spike ability, so you can achieve even higher damage. Note that if you already proc the Empower from your Rapier, it will also transfer to your Ice Gauntlet, but sometimes due to the many buffs and debuffs on your bar, it might be hard to notice that. Again, while using the Spike build for the Ice Gauntlet and while damaging a single named mob, don't wait on your teammates to apply the root so they can buff your damage. Make that yourself with the Heavy Freeze passive, as you can heavy attack a mob into an Ice Storm and this will root the target. Also don't forget that the storm should always be placed before the spike, so you can increase the damage of the spike by 25%. When using the rapier, make sure to always add flurry as the last bleed stack. This will increase the duration of all previous bleed stacks, and it will result in a higher damage when the flourish and finish is used. Another tip for the rapier is that with enough refreshing perks and the correct positioning, the flurry can reset itself alone. However, you should still use Tondo from time to time due to the fact that Tondo from the finisher is extremely helpful as it provides weaken. If for some reason the tank drops the aggro on a big pile of mobs and you are the one focused by them, make sure to use your flourish and finish more often and don't wait for the third stack of bleed. This ability will stagger your enemies and will provide you with grit, which can be quite helpful and save the situation. When playing Musket, always remember to aim for the head, as it will give you a lot of bonuses such as extra damage and refreshing. Also make sure that after a powder shot you dodge and you can instantly use your power shot. As those two abilities don't require you to load the musket, you can simply press their buttons just before firing. And with that guys, I think it's safe to say that we covered fully the rapier bleed build for PvE in depth. I really hope that this video will help you get familiar with the best damage weapon in the game, and for those of you who are already using it, it will give them the extra knowledge and tips to make the next step. If you have any questions or doubts, please let me know in the comments or in my Discord community channel, for which you can find the link in the description below. For those of you who are not interested only in PvE but also in PvP or any other content of New World, you can follow my live stream on Kick. As always guys, thank you so much for watching and I will see you on the next one.